this November 1st, or as it was once referred to as All Hallows Day. Of course, that's how we arrived to the Halloween celebration we have today, the eve before Hallows Day. Our daughter, Mumu, embarked on a trick-or-treat inside the house last night with our dog, Charlie. And that was pretty funny because they had about five doors that they could knock on, and we have enough people in our house to be able to trick or treat with. So that was a lot of fun for her. In fact, I was gonna share that. Let's see. If you haven't seen this on Facebook already, there she is. So here's Charlie, and then she dressed up as Charlie, and Charlie dressed up as a gnome. So that was kind of funny. But happy All Saints Day. And the day that is celebrated with a solemnity of those faithful leaders in the cause who have passed on before us. And I want us to turn our attention today, if we can, to thinking about our own ancestors, physical ancestors, spiritual ancestors, those without whom we would not be here today. Let us remember them, our saints. Today's sermon title is The Power of Choices. And I think I want to set kind of a context of us to explore that a little bit more. Talking about those saints that came before us, the people that we descend from. And I think of my own great-great-grandmother, Hokti, who crossed the Trail of Tears from Mississippi into Oklahoma nearly 200 years ago. And she was only 7 years old at the time. And she lost our entire family at that time to a brutal winter in 1831. While on the trail and arriving into this new strange place, the Indian Territory, which would later be called Oklahoma. And all alone in the sense of not having her family that had brought her parents. And the Choctaws, they simply called her Hokti, which literally means little girl. And that was the name she used for the rest of her life. But it was her resilience that would give rise to the eventual of her descendants, tribal leaders and judges, powerful women who would shape our family forever. So let us take a moment to remember our own ancestors, even those that we may not know, those who came on the Middle Passage and survived the grueling effects of slavery, those who came over on other boats and ships in the Northern Atlantic who barely made it to the New World. Let us remember our ancestors today, but let us remember those people that sowed into our lives, made us who we are, this All Saints Day. You know, before the Choctaws were in Mississippi, they were actually the ancient people of Mexico, and I don't know if everyone knows that, so you may not have. Before the dominance of their cousins, the Aztecs and Mayans. That's why they share symbols, language, religion with all the Gulf natives all around the Gulf of Mexico. But the tradition that has survived very prominently in Mexico is, and I'm sure you are all aware of, is Dia de Muertos, or Day of the Dead. And there's this wonderful story. I don't know if everyone's seen the movie, the animated movie Coco. If you haven't, I think it's fantastic. And it's one of Mumu's favorites, one of my favorites. We watched it last night together. And it talks about the tradition of Dia de Muertos, and it talks about the ofrenda, setting up pictures of ancestors and lighting candles and thinking about them, the memories of them. And in this way, you honor them, but also it's an invitation, I guess, for those family members in the mythology anyway, to cross over back into this world and to be loved. And in the story, the opposite happens. this preteen, Miguel, he somehow crosses accidentally into the land of the dead. And so that's what the movie, and I don't want to give away the whole plot. So for those of you who want to watch the movie in its full, it's called Coco, C-O-C-O. And but the idea, I'm not going to give away everything, don't worry. So if you can continue to listen. But the idea was that Miguel gets sucked into the land of the dead, and for most of the movie, and he's on adventures with his own relatives in this other world. And his own soul searching. It's kind of happening because he comes from a family that doesn't forbids music, and he loves music, and he loves to play the guitar and to sing the traditional Mexican songs. And somehow his family, though, has created a tradition of forbidding music because his great-great-grandfather had run off and left the family in order to be a musician. And because of that, they punish the family for generations, passing down this kind of anger. And they forbid music because the music is, it's of the devil, right? It's this thing that takes you away from the things that you need to dedicate your time and place to. So Miguel is struggling as he's exploring and doing adventures in this other world. He also reconciles his great-great-grandmother and his great-great-grandfather, Papa Hector. He's the one who ran off. And it's true that he had run off and left the family in order to tour with music. And he regretted it, though. And so his last wish was because on his way back, he had turned away from the music to come back to his family. And he was killed by someone who stole his music and became famous. And so the family never knew that he had chosen his family, his own family again, and was returning to his little daughter, Coco. And that's why the name is Coco. That's her nickname. So now Miguel's great-grandmother, who's in her twilight years, she's dying. And she's forgetting, her name is Coco, and she's forgetting her father. She's losing memory. And what happens is as the memory, the last living memories of that person begin to fade, Papa Hector is fading in the other world too. Now, Papa Hector doesn't care about fading in the other world. That's not what's important to him. What's important to him is that he never got back to his daughter. And so he wants so desperately to get back to her, just to see her one more time. But he can't cross the bridge like everyone else can on Dia de Muertos because they don't put up a picture of him. They've ripped it out. And so he's begging Miguel to get back to the living world and put up his picture so he can see his daughter one more time. And then maybe when she also dies and crosses over, they can be reunited. That's all he cares about. And so there's this interplay that's constantly happening between doing the right thing and making the right choices. Papa Hector regrets the choice he had made. And I think many of us regret choices that we make in life, things that we did that we wish we hadn't done. I mean, there's those deep kind of moments where we're like reflecting on our lives and we're like, man, I wish I hadn't done it that way. And a lot of this story is about that, but it's also about new beginnings. It's about looking past the bad decisions and making good decisions now. And the point is the power of choice, the power of choices. The author of Hebrews points back to some of the Israelites' greatest heroes facing incredible choices, right? And choosing unpopular things at the time, and even making terrible choices altogether. Just think of King David, or before him, Samson. They all made bad choices, but they also made some good choices. And one thing is clear: they had to live with those choices. Many of us, I'm sure, feel weighted down at times, knowing the costs that have been made for some of our own personal bad choices in life. Some of us live with deep regret, and we replay those words, woulda, shoulda, coulda, over and over in our minds. But what benefit is there in that? I tell you this, choices cannot be undone, right? They can't be undone. We can't go back and change those things, especially as we're viewing from the present into the past. But we have been told some ancient wisdoms that can give us calm, can give us resolve. And so I think about even the Apostle Paul saying, all things work together for the good of those who love God in Romans 8. I feel like this is like God's salvaging plan. Somehow God rakes together those bad choices and begins to find new intersections of goodness, things that bring about a result that is pleasing to the Creator and creation, like peace, love, unity, and hope. I also think about the Apostle Paul's revelation that God's strength is made perfect in weakness in 2 Corinthians 12. How relieving that must be for many of us, right? For those of us who get this one, while surrounded by a great number of prayers all around us that say, Lord, give me strength, because that's how we've been taught to pray. But many of us are catching on to this, like John the Baptist's revelation those many years ago when he said, I must decrease, you must increase, referring to God. John chapter 3. And in that there is a key, and that key is so important. Instead of saying, Lord, give me strength, we say instead, Lord, make me weak. That's the secret. But are we ready for this mystery to manifest itself in our lives as humility, as love, as faith? And similar to what the author of Hebrews said about those great Israelite heroes of old, they dispensed authentic justice, gained what was promised, shut the mouth of lions, quenched the flames, and escaped the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength. Hebrews chapter 11, right? God is a God of humility and mercy. So let that mercy reign in our hearts, and let us not forget from those whom we descend, those who suffered in this life, so that we can carry that torch forward with the effect that some change in this world that is positive and fruitful. So let us not ponder our missed opportunities, our poor choices from the past. Let us not dwell on these mistakes. Let us instead understand the power of our choices in this life, in this present moment. And let us make new ones that will allow our descendants and the descendants of all those around us. That means people who don't look like you. That means outside of your culture, outside of your language, outside of your tribe, even outside of your religion. But that those decisions will affect the descendants as they carry a torch burning brightly. And what will that torch be fueled by? And my hope is that it is fueled by lavish love, radical mercy, and extreme compassion. If you can be accused of anything, let it be that you loved too much, that you gave too much, that you did too much, that you cared too much. And may we all fall in step with the prophet Micah's admonishment from the Lord, who commanded him to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Let us walk together.